Hey everybody, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by...
Nerdix Dave.
And today, we get a little GM 911 in this crazy.
We're going to start this video by thanking our sponsor, One Bookshelf. You might know them from sites like DTRPG and the DMs Guild, and there's a bunch other. Well, down in the description, we're going to have some links to some of those sites, our favorite ones actually, as well as a one-time discount code for purchases over $10 for their digital stuff only. You can check the description, find that there is tons of stuff to add to your games from there. Everything from pay what you want being $0 up to whatever people are willing to charge. So go check it out.
We have a GM 911, and if you want to submit those to us, you can send those to us at nerdarchy@gmail.com, as well as down in the description, there's going to be the full listing of what this GM asked us.
Yeah, the original post. So what is this GM's problem, and who is he?
So this is from Mike, and he's got a player who is in a Starfinder game and wants to have multiple personality disorder. But the problem is this DM likes to have, apart from the ongoing story arc, individual character arcs. And how do you do a character arc when this character's got multiple personalities?
Right, so his real issue is, how do I incorporate this character's backstory into this character that might be multiple characters?
Right. So I look at this as at a core identity, even when you've got a multiple personality, you still have a core of who that character is. And I would treat this as that character, that core, has a goal, has a story, and each of the different personalities is going to have a different way to go about achieving those goals. But while doing so, you're still going to have that one story that you can feed into the main story arc.
Now, I don't personally know if that's how that medical condition actually really works, but for my game, I would say, listen, I want to let you play this character. I want you to be able to explore this, but here's what I need from you as a GM in order to make this work and make this happen. I need a common thread that runs through the personalities, so that is going to tie them to the party, is going to keep them in the group playing, and is going to keep them kind of on course and on par with the story that's being told at the table collectively with the group.
Yeah, I'm not a medical professional either. I've just seen in other fantasy stories, that's how this was portrayed. So that's how I would run it. So
yeah.
I'm not.
We're not doctors, but sometimes we may portray them.
we might game with doctors, but no, we're not medically trained.
Yeah. So so that's one of the things. Is like, okay, have a common denominator that you as the GM can kind of tie into, that the player can work, and it would just really be like he would get to go at this from different angles depending on who was in the driver's seat at the time.
Now, the personalities that he came up with was like the wise man, the healer, an animal, and a psychopath. Now, each of these guys would do different things, different things based on the situation. I wouldn't have separate stats for them. These would literally just be, you've got a character sheet, and the driving mental force behind it is one of these personalities. And then the DM and the player should sit down and come up with a system that's going to work for how you switch or how you change. And there's a couple different options that I see.
Right. Well, I want to delve into the character types a little bit more first.
Okay.
And one of the things I would say is that, like you said, the stats stay the same. It's just how you role play that changes. You're gonna differentiate by role playing differently. That's the one thing. Now, if this was a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons game, I might say, well, you might come up with personality traits, bonds, and ideals and flaws for each one of them, and that would work fine. It would be really easy for 5e by using that background stuff and incorporating it into the personalities.
But the actual physical, mental statistics on a character would be the same. Your class and race, that would all have to stay the same. There would be no mechanical choices short of that role-playing choices that exist within 5th. Now, or the one with multiple personality disorder sometimes has triggers. Now, I think it would be very complex to come up with a massive system that, oh, this triggers this guy and this triggers that personality, and all of these things can set me off. I think that is more work than it needs to be. So I would set forth, like, you can either have it be done and it's the player's prerogative to change, the DM's prerogative to change. It could be randomly rolled, and you set forth like how often it can change. To go like a round by round or even an hour by hour could get very taxing on not only the group itself but the player or the DM in this scenario.
So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can go session to session. You can go scene to scene. I think both of those work okay. Or you can go by triggers, right? And you might come up with like a broad swath of triggers depending on each of the personality types. There's 4, so things that are intrinsically very physical and very primal might trigger the animal. Things that are very philosophical or cerebral might trigger the wise man. Something that requires a lot of empathy or compassion might, trigger the healer. And for this psychopath, something really disturbing or emotionally stressful might trigger him.
Drop below 25% of your hit points.
Well, it could be whatever. Like I'm thinking more in like story wise than the mechanical wise, but that could be a thing as well.
So each of those things definitely works. Having a random roll to to have one of these triggers or to see who starts off with this, it can be interesting, but at minimum, like you wanna limit how often this change can happen, because like I said, it's going to be very very challenging and taxing on everyone at the table to put up with this shift in a character.
Biggest thing is going to be just coming up with a consistent method and always using the same one. And then, you as the GM and the player, you're going to have to like kind of agree on things. You could go with agency for the player and he switches back and forth when he feels it's appropriate. As long as you have a player that can handle that responsibly, it's okay. Or you could just leave it on the GM. And again, hopefully your GM's not a jerk and isn't going to like switch you back and forth at the most inopportune times all the time. Occasionally it'll be fun. It makes it interesting. Random all the time would be a pain. And also, like, if you're doing random, what does that really mean? What then does the trigger? Because we talked about triggers. Mm-hmm. They're very specific. Like, this happens and that leads to this. Which, at least you kind of know what's going to happen and what kind of areas as the other players at the table might want to keep you out of, right? So that's another thing. If you go with random or if you go with agency, the other players are never going to know what's going to happen, right? If you go with triggers, that could be interesting and dynamic for the party, because then they can go about like, oh, well, this thing's coming up. Oh, what about so-and-so? Like, think about the A-team, right? And whenever they need to fly somewheres and, B.A. Baracus's phobia of planes and flying, always came into play, and they always had to figure out how they were going to trick him, how they were going to knock him out, how they were going to get him on the plane. So it became like a kind of like a game for the rest of the people in that party if they were an adventuring party in that team.
Right.
So you could do the same thing in your game with the triggers. That's one of the reasons why I would lead towards triggers. I would discuss it with all the players, or at least the player it involves, whether then you and the GM, the player and the GM can decide whether it's going to come out during gameplay and then the other players will kind of learn about it, or if they've known this character for a while and they already kind of know, and they're always having to think ahead of, oh no, this is going to trigger the healer, but we need the guy that kicks ass right now. It becomes part of the game.
Now, that very, very strong point, and Dave totally showing his age, pulling out the A-Team reference. I would, if this were my game.
Hey, I just want to point out they remade an A-Team movie, and it was even funnier because BA used to be a paratrooper.
But I would, you give me this as, I'm the GM. You're gonna feed me this kind of stuff every so often, and I would limit it. But every once in a while, I'm gonna put the wrong personality in charge for the scene, just to see how you handle it. Like, okay, you're in the king's court, and now you're going to be that rabbit animal.
Well, and the other thing too is, one, we discussed this, I guess, off camera, is like one of the personalities should probably be the core personality, or there should be a core personality. And the other thing is, do you incorporate maybe a saving throw, a will save, wisdom save, for avoiding the trigger? Like you're able to maintain the dominant personality, the one that you want, the one you are right now.
Now, I did a game long time ago in my college days that was what was a multiple personality game, but all of the players represented a different personality within one body. And we did it as like a contested role. If the person in charge was trying to be thrown out by one of the other personalities, they could willingly, allow another personality to take control. But if somebody wanted to force their way in, it was just a straight D20 roll, and whoever rolled higher, was it.
So you're saying you should make them roll against themselves?
No, I'm just saying that the will save, kind of thing does fit in here, and you could set a DC, and like the higher like the trigger would be for that kind of a character. Like, okay, you've watched your friend die and combat's going on. Well, the psychopath really wants to be in control here, so it's going to be a DC 20 versus something that is like, all right, well, the healer wants to be in control because somebody got hurt and it's not egregious, it's not a grievous wound, so it might only be a DC 10, depending upon how complex you want to get with coming up with unique mechanics for this individual character or player.
The trick is just to be consistent so your players always kind of know what to expect, even when something unexpected is happening.
Right.
So the question is, guys, how would you handle this in your game? How would you set up the mechanics and this the scenario for switching back and forth between personalities, as well as how would you keep one story flowing throughout the whole mix of personalities so that this character can also have his backstory come up in the game as well? But we got a place where you can let us know about that, and it's down in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
While you're down there, don't forget to check that description and check out one bookshelf's awesome opportunities and that coupon code.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.